Welcome back, U.S. history students. Hope everyone is doing well. Today we are going to be finishing up with our coverage of the Cold War. With remote learning, we've kind of condensed things a little bit and shortened this unit just a touch. So we'll be wrapping up with the material today. Friday, you will have a unit assessment for the Cold War, and it's just going to be multiple choice. So it'll probably be about 10 to 12 multiple choice questions with stimuli given to you. That'll be posted on Friday. All right, another reminder, next week on Wednesday, the marking period wraps up. So Wednesday, April 29th is the last day for marking period 2. So please make sure that you're getting missing work turned in by that date. And I've sent this out in messages, but one of the areas you can really focus on is making sure you have your exams or assessments completed. That makes up the majority of your grades. So that's a great place to start chipping away at improving your grade. So for today, we'll get into the aim. And it's how can we summarize the causes of the Cuban Missile Crisis, identify how this increased Cold War tensions, and then we're analyzing the conclusion of this event. Okay, so we're kind of looking at cause and effect today for specifically the Cuban Missile Crisis. Okay, so if you're due now, you're choosing one of the three prompts below and you are responding to it on your handout. Okay, so you're just choosing one of these three questions and respond to it in a full sentence. You can pause this video and start it right back up when you are done with your due now. Okay, so now we're just going to be moving on to our fast facts. All right, and our fast facts start off in 1959. We see that there's a revolution in Cuba that brings Fidel Castro to power. Okay, so our focus today, we're moving away from Asia, we're moving away from Korea, Vietnam, we're moving to the Western Hemisphere to Cuba, okay, 90 miles off the coast of Florida. All right, remember we talked about Spanish-American War. Cuba is very close proximity to the United States, and it has a lot of political and economic importance to the United States. So we see in 1959, in the midst of this Cold War, that Fidel Castro comes to power in Cuba, and he starts ruling the nation in a communist fashion. And very quickly, the United States kind of reverses their stance on Castro. When he starts ruling in this communist manner, they see this as a threat to that policy of containment and a threat that's very, very close to the United States borders. So we see only 2 years later, in 1961, the U.S. actually tries to overthrow Castro in Cuba. And this is a disastrous attempt. All right, this is known as the Bay of Pigs invasion. JFK is the president during this failed attack. And it's really a black eye for the U.S. Diplomatically. All right. Also, it gives fuel to Castro's kind of desires to become allies with the Soviet Union. It pushes Castro away from the United States even further. Okay, so the U.S. kind of, in their failed military policies, push Castro towards forming a stronger relationship with the Soviet Union. All right, once again, bullet 3 addresses that right away. All right, so Castro turns to the Soviet Union for help. Okay, so not only does this Bay of Pigs incident fail to remove Castro from power, it actually kind of creates this strong alliance between Cuba and the Soviet Union. And we see just a year later, the Soviets take advantage of this relationship, okay? The Soviets make a secret agreement to station nuclear weapons in Cuba, okay? And this is kind of that escalation of Cold War tension we've talked about throughout this unit. The Cold War turns into a hot war in Korea and Vietnam, all right? But when the Soviets plan to put missiles on an island 90 miles away from the United States, that is seen as a major threat by the United States. Okay, the U.S. finds out about this, and we see what's known as the Cuban Missile Crisis occur. Okay, and the threat of the Soviets shipping and placing these weapons 90 miles from the coast of the United States, and paired with the expansion of communism spreading, leads to one of the most tense turning points in world history. All right, and there's a scene that's actually covered by news stations of the Soviets shipping these weapons across the ocean, and there's a real tension. There's a real fear that if the Soviets move forward with this plan to place uh, nuclear weapons on the Cuban island, it could really end, or it could really lead to a destructive war. Right? It could lead to total mass destruction, where the Soviets maybe fire nuclear weapons, the U.S. responds, and it puts the world on edge. Okay, you'll cover it in the work today, but luckily the Soviets choose to turn those ships carrying those weapons around. They return to the Soviet Union, and the crisis is averted. As I've said before, we're kind of condensing our material today, and usually we would do bullet 5 on its own as an independent day where we cover the end of the Cold War. Today we're just kind of covering it with a fast fact. So we see that the Cold War continues through the 60s, 70s, 80s, and in the tail end of the 1980s, the Cold War is seen as coming to an end. One of the very visible dividing forces in Europe is the Berlin Wall. It's separating East Berlin, West Berlin, separating communism and capitalism. The Berlin Wall comes down. That's seen as a symbolic kind of unification of Berlin, but also unification of Europe. All right, we see that borders are opened back up, and that communist regimes are ousted. They're gotten rid of. Okay, and then finally, in 1991, we see that the Soviet Union itself dissolves, falls apart. Okay, we see that Russia kind of emerges from that fall. And communism is seen as kind of the loser in this Cold War. And a lot of it comes down to political and economic issues these communist regimes run into. Okay, so what you guys are going to be doing today, you have a thinking question on your paper to get you going. Okay, it's printed on your paper. And it's trying to think about this power dynamic. What impact could Cuba becoming communist have on the Cold War? How could this impact the balance of power in the Cold War? And I'm going to ask you to keep coming back to the geography behind this situation. Cuba is 90 miles away from Florida. All right. Cuba is a very, very close neighbor of the United States. So we need to understand that even though it's a small nation, the geographic importance of Cuba, it can't be understated. Okay, once you finish up with the thinking question, and I'm going to pull up your document here. All right, you see this table that you're going to be working through, and it says document set A is a set of maps, and then document set B is a speech by JFK. The document you're going to get itself has these documents below. Document A, the map sets are here. The text for JFK's speech is also provided. The PowerPoint as well will have this information. So you can see the next slide has the maps. All right. And then the slide after this, I'll put the text for the reading as well. So you're going to be using those maps. You're going to be using those readings to help you complete this table right here with those questions that are already provided. And then the next thing you're going to be doing is using this reading that focus on resolving the crisis, resolving this Cuban Missile Crisis. I already mentioned the Soviets end up not placing the weapons in Cuba. Crisis is averted. You'll get some more details in here as well from the perspective of the Soviet leader. And to conclude today's activity, all right, you'll see you have a summary task as well. Okay, these should be full sentences, detailed with information from the maps, from the readings, from those analysis questions. Okay, so you have a pretty full day today. Make sure you are using the sources that are provided to you to assist. For those high-level answers, we want task response, detailed explanation, analysis included. All right. If you have any questions, any concerns about the work, feel free to reach out to me. Friday will be a multiple choice day that you'll have till Monday to complete. All right. Hope everyone's doing well. Speak with you guys soon.